Alright, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hi everyone, my name is Daffa, Araga Effajri Putra. I'm from 5th A class, and this is video according to the research method in education 6th edition of a research and development in ALT subject, lecturer by Mr. Nuardi MPD. Alright, this video talk about sampling. The first, let we talk about definition of the sampling. Sampling is the process of selecting observation, a sample, to provide an adequate description and inference of population. A small thing is sample is unit that's selected from the population, represent the whole population and purpose to draw the inference. Sampling frame, listing of population from which a sample is chosen. According to Raymond James Jackson, said in many practical situations, the frame is matter of choice to survey planner and sometimes a critical one. Some very worthwhile investigations are not undertaken at all because of the lack of an apparent frame. Other because of the faulty frames have indeed a disaster or in cold of doubt about the sampling frame. Next, about type of sampling. The first type is probability sampling. The first, sample random sampling. Second, stratified random sampling. Third, cluster sampling. Fourth, systematic random sampling. Fifth, multistage sampling. And next is non-probability sampling. The first, convenience sampling. Second, quota sampling. Third, judgmental sampling or purposive sampling. Fourth, snowball sampling. And fifth, self-selection sampling. Next, let's talk about the probability sampling. The first one is simple random sampling. Simple random sampling is all subsets of the frame are given an equal probability and random number of generator. There are the advantages and disadvantages. The advantages, the first is minimal knowledge of population needed and easy to analyze the data. And the disadvantages is low quality of use, does not use researchers' expertise, and large risk of random error. The next is stratified random sampling. Its population is divided into two or more groups called strata. Subsample are randomly selected from each strata. The advantages is assure representation of all groups in sample population. Characteristic of each stratum can be estimate and comparison made. And disadvantages is require accurate information on proposition of each stratum and stratified list costly to prepare. The next is cluster sampling. Population is divided into subgroup or cluster like family, and a sample random sample is taken from each group or each cluster. The advantages can estimate characteristic of both cluster and population. Disadvantages is the cost to reach the element to sample is very high, and each stage in cluster sampling introduce sampling error. The more stage there are, the more error there tend to be. The next is systematic random sampling. Order all units in the sampling frame, and then every number on the list is selected. The advantages is moderate cost or moderate usage, simple to draw sample, and easy to verify. And disadvantages is periodic ordering required. Next, multi-stage sampling. Carry out in stages and using smaller and smaller sampling unit at each stage. Advantages, more accurate and more effective. Disadvantages, costly, and each stage is sampling introduce sampling error. The more stages there are, the more error there tend to be. And that are all about probability sampling. Next, we talk about the non-probability sampling. The first is convenience sampling. Convenience sampling involves choosing respondent at the convenience of the researcher. The advantages very low cost and extensively used or understood, and disadvantages variably and bias cannot be measured or controlled, projecting data beyond sample not justified, and restriction generalization. The next, quota sampling. The population is first segmented into mutuality exclusive subgroup, just as in stratified sampling. The advantages used when the research budget is limited, very extensively used or understood, and no need for list of population elements. Disadvantages, variability and bias cannot be measured or controlled, time consuming, and projecting data beyond sample not justified. Next, judgmental sampling is researcher employ his or her own expert judgment about. The advantages is there is assure of quality response and meet the specific objective. The disadvantages is the selection of sample many occur and time-consuming process. The next is snowball sampling. The research starts with a key person and introduce the next one to become a chain. The advantages is low cost and useful in specific circumstances and for locating rare population. Disadvantages not independent and projecting data beyond sample not justified. The last is self-selection sampling. It occurs when you allow each case, usually individuals, to identify their desire to take part in the research. The advantage is more accurate and useful in specific circumstances to serve the purpose, and the disadvantages is more costly due to the advertising and mass are left. And next, in sampling there are sampling error, and we gonna talk about sampling error. Sampling error is the error which arises due to the use of sampling. Survey are known as the sampling error. There are two types of sampling error. The first, diabetes error due to selection of sampling technique, size of the sample, and unbiased error or random sampling error. Difference between the number of the population included or not included. But there are the method of reducing the sampling error. The first, specific problem selection. Second, systematic documentation of related research. The third, effective enumeration. Fourth, effective pre-testing. Fifth, controlling methodological bias. And sixth, selection of the appropriate sampling technique. Alright, maybe that's all that I can tell you about sampling. I'm sorry for my mistake. Bila hidayah wa taufik, and thank you. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.